Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Vault Games Discord now, as we are playing live via webcam every Wednesday and Friday night, and Matt is leading out with a Ponder here, and I'm not actually sure what Kaider is on. He's on a sweet Grimlock playmat, but I'm not sure if he's going to be on Burn or not. We will see. Might be Delver. I'm not actually sure all the decks that he has played with us so far. Looks like a Marsh Flats, perhaps. Gilded Goose for Matt. Ramping here on turn 2. And the thing with Aluren, it's kind of this mid-rangey deck that has a combo in it. It's still not entirely clear the best path forward. I think Kaider's going to be on a blue-white control list here as a Swords to Plowshares off of Tundra. And now an Underground Sea for a Baleful Strix. Daze from Matt protecting. And now a Euro going to make up for that land drop. And he is a very dangerous card when you're not playing against white. I will say white does a little bit better versus Euro with Swords to Plowshares and to a lesser degree Karakas. I mean, they can prevent getting mugged by a 6/6 much more effectively than many of the other colors. Baleful Strix getting in there, doing some damage. And Matt, I believe, missed a land drop there off of Euro, perhaps drawing the Tropical for turn. End step, he'll be able to recharge this Golden Goose. Seems to be fine. I mean, think Birds of Paradise, Noble Hierarch. There are a lot of competitors for this mana ramp spot, and it does actually seem like Gilded Goose may be optimal. At first, seems like it could be a little too cutesy, but the synergy with Oko, not to be dismissed, and the fact that those food tokens can be sacrificed to gain some life. You know, dragging out a game when you're a control deck, not really the same as kind of giving yourself an extra turn to combo off. You can be completely off the board, so to speak, with Aluren and just land on Aluren and win, compared to a control deck, which really does need to battle on the battlefield. You just can't fall that far behind. But Aluren can effectively ignore all of that if it can just resolve its 4-mana enchantment. Couple of Baleful Strixes for Kaider. Have drawn some cards, but ultimately they don't really do what they need to in this matchup. Here's the Aluren. Starting with a Brainstorm here for Kaider. Oh, and it's going to resolve. So starting out here with a with a Cavern Harpy. Icefang Coatl on the battlefield. Now gets returned with the Baleful Strix's ability. So basically each point of life is going to draw a card. Matt stacking it up so he can further respond with the Cavern Harpy if need be. But at this stage, there's really no responses Kaider could have being tapped out that are likely to matter. Now Euro, and that should be a wrap. So Euro with Cavern Harpy is actually going to net life. Instead of trading a point of life to draw a card, now you're gaining 2 life every time you draw a card. So Matt's going to be able to draw a fistful of cards and eventually tutor up the Cauldron Familiar. And from here, Cavern Harpy, every time it enters, Kaider will lose a life, and Matt will gain a life. Cavern Harpy will return itself repeatedly, literally doing infinite damage. Or infinite life loss, I should say, to be more accurate. And that is going to do it. As Aluren, just an incredibly potent card. Looks like we've got a Esper build of control here for Kaider. Does give him a lot of options out of the board that can potentially interact with Aluren. Probably the best card against it would be like Krosan Grip. I mean, something with split second, because Aluren's tricky, man. Everything at instant speed really changes the dynamic, and cards like, I'm trying to think if he actually could be on Omnitel. He had Swords to Plowshares. I don't think there's any way that he's on Omnitel. I think it's got to be some type of control list. The instant speed responses with Aluren can get pretty deep. Even Eternal Witness, for example, can be played at instant speed. I've seen people with Aluren out cast a Force of Will to defend part of the combo, and it gets a force thrown at it and actually let that resolve, and then Eternal Witness to get the force back and continue to fight. It's pretty wild, the type of interactions that can happen when creatures start to get flash. And of course, it makes it a dangerous card versus Belcher, or versus Sneak and Show, sorry, any type of show and tell deck. Similar to how Belcher has a trump built in, where if you have 3 mana available to you and they play show and tell, you can just, go for the headshot with your Belcher. Aluren's kind of the same thing. If they play a show and tell and you put in Aluren, I mean, that is probably not what they had in mind, and it became a little bit of a game of chicken. If you go for your combo, I mean, they have to have an instant speed win. So if all they have is like an Emrakul, you're going to be able to actually kill them before they get their extra turn. So yeah, this seems like some type of control shell. Swords to Plowshares and Baleful Strix with some cantrips. What we've seen so far, we can assume the counter spells. It'll really be a question of the win conditions, if he's got like a Stoneblade package or if it's going to be more Mentor-ish. We've seen the Aether Vial. Maybe it's Spirits? No? Boy, I don't know. I'm really curious what this list is. It might be Spirits with Baleful Strix. Not everything has to be a Spirit. Yeah, because we had the Aether Vial previously. And a Karakas. Vial on 2, puts in a Meddling Mage. Wizards is actually a really cool deck. I haven't seen that in a long time in Legacy. Patron Wizard is a hilarious Magic card. And Recruiter of the Guard. Meddling Mage. Kind of forcing plan B here for Matt. Aethersworn Canonist. Also very good with Aether Vial. The fact that you can continue to build your board presence without using your spell for turn really turns your Force of Wills into trump cards that can just one-up anything your opponent's looking to do. Containment Priest being flashed in response to this Vial activation. Gonna decline to put anything in. And now his 1 spell for turn is going to be Aethersworn Canonist. That's going to get Force of Willed. And force back. And now Oko is really the most dangerous card for Kaider to look out for. Oko potentially capable of winning the game on his own versus this board, just making 3/3s. Cauldron Familiar coming down. And Matt actually looking to get aggressive here, swinging with the Containment Priest. Thinking he can win the race in between Cauldron Familiar and potential food being sacrificed. A Brainstorm for Kiter. Finds him a Wasteland and a way to kill this Tundra for Matt. His mana slightly restrained. Wasteland, one of those cards that can be played so many different ways. One thing that I actually am a fan of in control lists is after your opponent has done a lot of optimization of their hand with Brainstorm and Ponder, Wasteland can do some real damage then. Early on in the game, they can potentially use those cantrips to mitigate the damage. A food gets upgraded into an Elk, which is honestly gigantic right now. The 3/3 Elk just bigger than everything else on the board. And Oko, a very real threat. Potentially going to be pumping out a 3/3 every turn thanks to Gilded Goose. And that's going to be a lot to handle given this Containment Priest. If Matt has a Force of Will or any type of counter, like, he can really be very comfortable going back and forth each turn, knowing that his board presence is only going to get better without even using his mana. Gilded Goose making another food, so Matt opting to spend 2 mana to make another beast and sending it in there. 3 coming across. Canonist makes cards like Brainstorm and Ponder so much worse. And this seems to be a pretty good example of plan B here for Aluren. So Matt picked up game 1 on the back of the combo, but game 2 here, Oko creating a pretty difficult board state for Kiter to contend with. Teferi showing up and getting rid of one of these beasts, but I mean, 4 damage from Meddling Mage and Aethersworn Canonist is not enough to clear Oko. And if he wanted to, he could have actually traded in Containment Priest for one of those other bears. I'm actually a little surprised that he didn't. Everything going at Teferi. And no block. Not going to block the Cauldron Familiar, which I think is a 1/1. Maybe it's a 1/2. I feel like Recruiter of the Guard, not as good. Yeah, it's just a 1/1 for 1. Palace Jailer showing up, getting rid of the Containment Priest. And Kiter becoming the Monarch. And everything headed at Oko. A beast does KO the Meddling Mage. And Kiter, not sure if he actually remembered to draw a card there. He is the Monarch. It looks like Matt will be becoming the Monarch shortly. Oh no, Plague Engineer. Here we go. Plague Engineer can shrink these elk. No, he's going to kill Cauldron Familiar with the Plague Engineer, it looks like. Nope, on second assessment, he is shrinking the elk, and Plague Engineer blocks the Cauldron Familiar, and the Palace Jailer traded with the other elk, is what it looks like happened there. Gilded Goose makes another food. Couple of 2/2s come across. And everything's dying there. I'm not entirely positive what he named with the Plague Engineer. There's a couple of things not quite adding up. Those were all legal plays, it would seem, but I'm not sure if they would have been optimal if elk was being named. The 3 power there. Yeah, I guess he must have named Cauldron Familiar. Interesting. Baleful Strix being found off of Recruiter of the Guard. And Cauldron Familiar just coming right back off of that food. Hey, an ability that doesn't happen that often. But when it does, it can catch your opponent off guard. Feels like a bit of a throwaway line of text outside of the combo decks that use the cat with the cauldron. But it does actually happen here with Oko. And we've got a Thoughtseize taking a look at a Force of Negation and 2 Baleful Strixes. One Baleful Strix goes to the bin. These Aether Vials not feeling stellar right now. This is really getting grindy. Baleful Strix finds a land. Cauldron Familiar. Just apparently a resilient threat. Appropriate for beating down your opponent. And now Aluren into the Force of Negation. Matt knew it was there. And he is fine letting it go. Meddling Mage. Comes down, and I'm not even sure what you name here now. Like, do you go with Oko? Or do you go with Aluren? I mean, that Aluren being thrown away like that kind of feels like Matt wouldn't have been able to win with the Aluren. No, we've got another Aluren being cast. So Matt just had enough to double cast the Aluren. brainstorming now and just needs to find Recruiter of the Guard. Brainstorm into Ponder. And when they keep there, you're not going to be super happy. Ice Fang Coatl into another Ice Fang, into Recruiter. And that is going to do it. Kiter not going to be able to stop the Aluren, as it shows to be a pretty resilient deck and can play both roles reasonably well. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.